It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
The Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney. Sean, how you doing today?
It gets me pumped, brother. I can't wait. And today, especially because we are going to delve into a topic that I certainly have educated myself over the years, and it involves, we've been talking tag teams. This is another one, Steve Fall, of a tag team that I think were and still are among the best in the world, the best ever.
Oh, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, Dynamite Kid. They are, when you look at them and their stature and their look and Matilda and all these controversial stories and all the highs, the lows. Today's going to be an episode. You know, I thought I'd rock this episode that went out early because YouTube smells bad sometimes and puts out things I don't want it to do.
Yeah.
So sorry, folks, that Texas Tornado came out last week. It was supposed to be the Rockers. My bad. I blame YouTube. Turn heel on me. But the British Bulldogs, you just said it.
Oh, good.
One of the best of all time. We talked about Legion of Doom already. We've talked about the Rockers so far as tag teams on this show. Yeah. Where do you rank the Bulldogs? Because this is from a different era, because they don't make it into the 90s as a tag team. They are centrally an 80s team.
Yeah. And as we have discussed before, when we talk about tag teams, you know, that was an era where it was the tag team era. I mean, that whole period of time where, you know, they had probably in the WWF, maybe 10 tag teams that were considered top superstars. It was just the time when they worked and people loved it, and the talent that they had in the ring performing were among the best of the world. And I don't think we've really seen that since. And I think now, you know, it's they have them, but not it's more of a spectacle in many cases, or they want to put a couple of guys together for a while or you know, get some shine on them. But back then it was the real deal. And so I just think I was fortunate that I was part of an era that really embraced tag teams. And, you know, when we talked about the Rockers, that's certainly among my top five. And I put the British Bulldogs right in there. But Steve, even beyond this, as we get into this episode, I really am excited to talk about it, because there are so many layers that are involved in this, between the Hart family and the union there with the Billingtons, Tom Billington, Dynamite, and Davey Boy Smith coming over, and them literally all becoming part of the family in one sense or another, and Stampede Wrestling and how it connected with the WWF, and that's how Bret Hart and that's how Dynamite Kid got to the World Wrestling Entertainment Group. You know, there's just so much involved in this, and it's a tragedy in the end, and yet they lived the best life you could have possibly lived at that time in professional wrestling, and took it worldwide. They were incredibly popular over in Japan. That's where they really honed their skills. And Dynamite Kid, at one point, Steve, and this is not you know, hyperbole, whatever you want to call it, he was considered the best wrestler or among the best wrestlers in the world, if not the best. And because he was this phenomenon when he came in, a small guy who, you know, certainly had a small man's complex and went to avenge that every single day, one of the toughest humans on the planet. But he was not a big guy. He got certainly that way with the help of science. But his style and what he would do every time he went into that ring sacrificed his life. I mean, in a sense, he just sacrificed his body. And in the end, it won. The body won. And so that's I know I went on there a little bit, but there is so much to the story. And it is a great one, although tragic.
Yeah, of course. And we've talked about it before, where we wonder the sacrifices that you're putting out there in the ring to hear the crowd pop, to get the payday, to send the money home. Is that all necessary? Is that in today's world, we talk about they work maybe 1 week, 2 days a week, maybe now in today's world, then They're working double shots on weekends. Yeah. They're going all week long, maybe home 4 days of the month. We talk about the tragedy of these men, but is it because of the time or is it because of the person?
Oh, both. You had to be an individual that, even when years later, and we're sprinting ahead here, but even years later when Tom Billington was sitting in a wheelchair in Wigan back home, when asked, he said, it cost me everything. By the time he was, in his 40s, he was a cripple. And yet he said, I wouldn't change a thing. And it was really, if you think about it, it was a decade in both of their lives that it was just, rock star status. They had a lot of work in between there, but to him, it was worth every minute of it. And I'm sure Davey Boy Smith would have said the same thing. It's, and that's the way it was done back then. But the cost was very high. And, today it's different. And thank God, the guys of today should thank people like Tom Billington and Davey Boy Smith. And the list goes on and on of those guys that were willing to pay that price every day, traveling the world, 6-7 days a week, 300 plus days a year to pave that highway that these guys are now able to cruise on. I will never discount how tough it is every time you step in that ring. But if you only have to do it once a week or something like that, I mean, think about it. That machine's gonna last a little longer.
I'd say a lot longer. But let's travel to the beginning where we first see them in the WWF. Vince McMahon buys Stampede Wrestling, and before you think of that, Stampede Wrestling, everybody that that's a Hart, a Smith, all these wrestlers come out of Stampede and eventually in the WWE. When Stampede Wrestling is purchased, this is like something's happening in the world where Vince is going around buying all the territories and then taking the top talent that he wants, getting the Hart Foundation that eventually become a tag team in the WWF, getting the British Bulldogs. That to me is the first memory that I have of WWF tag teams, not just going out there and having like clubbing below matches. These were clinics. These weren't your typical normal WWF style. These were wrestlers wrestling in a wrestling ring. And for you personally, is the Bulldogs lineage being one of the greatest tag teams, but especially with the Hart Foundation?
Oh, they're absolutely tied. Neither they wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Stu Hart and Stampede Wrestling. And we should talk a little bit about how that even happened because, Stampede Wrestling was always in a state of bankruptcy in a sense. I mean, they were always just trying to get by, and somehow Stu, would pull it together, or they'd get some talent to come in and they could last a few more months. And they knew they had to do something. Otherwise, that whole empire was going to crumble. And, Bret was very young then. He was green. And they heard about this incredible talent, Dynamite Kid, and persuaded him to come over. And the second they saw him in the ring, they were like, wow. And it immediately changed the whole dynamic of Stampede Wrestling and basically put them on the map again. And it certainly, they talk about the matches that Bret had with Tom. I don't know, should refer to him as Tom Billington or the Dynamite Kid, but at that point, yes. Yeah. And I mean, just absolute wars. A lot of it, Dynamite Kid loved to go toe to toe, loved the shoot, and the matches that Bret had with him early on, where Stu basically sacrificed him, but that's just the way Stu felt. That's how you became better. The sessions in the dungeon are legendary, of them stretching people, and it didn't matter if you were a son. He was probably even tougher on them.
Oh, 100%.
The wars that Tom, because he had a little, some resentment to Bret, and that he was green, and I mean, literally beating each other to death because Bret initially was taking it because he wasn't as skilled, but he got better and better and better, and at some point he was delivering those receipts, as many as Tom was delivering, but they would really come out of those matches bloodied. But anyway, it just helped Stampede really get back into the game and attract other, great talents. And they were kind of back on the map. Well, this kept going. And then Billington got the chance to go to Japan and for a lot more money. And he took that opportunity to go over there and wowed the crowds because it was perfect for him. They loved the high flying stuff, but adding that element of violence that the Dynamite Kid brought made him a superstar basically the first week he got there. And it was money that he had never seen before. But the fact that he would have to leave, he would leave maybe a month or something or two to go over there. And then Stampede was stuck with, okay, and we got to try and fill the gap here until he gets back. So anyway, as it all eventually happened, and they had a young cousin named Davey Boy. They called him young Davey. He had all these different things. But you look at video back then, he's just this skinny kid. And but he was also kind of a prodigy as well. And the story goes that Dynamite Kid wasn't real thrilled about having his cousin come over initially. For whatever reason, that maybe he thought I was going to be stuck with this kid, or maybe there was some, the jealousy that maybe this kid could be take some attention away from him. So he was brutal to Davey, but when he came over and was started working for Stampede. But anyway, as we might break it down more here, but eventually Stampede gets in trouble. Eventually, Vince McMahon, of course, is buying up all these territories. And it comes down to the point where the WWF at the time is going to buy it. What comes along with that deal is a very young Bret Hart and Dynamite Kid going to the WWE. And that's really where it all began as far as that superstardom for both of them. And then, of course, Davey Boy.
Young Davey.
Yeah.
It's so funny to think when you see wrestlers' pictures when they were like in high school.
Oh, my goodness.
You're like, that's you? That's you? And then you become this jacked guy.
Yeah. Davey Boy couldn't have been maybe $150, $160. I mean, you look at those videos. He was just some skinny high school kid. But in the ring, you watch they could tell he's got something. There's something to this kid. And it was a little different back then. You didn't have the big muscles and all that, so it was the finesse in the ring was more important in showmanship.
Yeah, and then Stampede Wrestling, there's been documentaries about it too, where just so many people came out of there and what it meant to Canada and what it meant to the Hart family and what it meant for wrestling in general. So it's just crazy to think that you get purchased, and then just like every other independent, every company territory, every top star gets brought over. We've talked about before. Yeah. Hacksaw, you got $1 Million Man, you got Jake the Snake. It's just an endless list of people. And Dynamite Kid is still to this day one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
Yes.
Personally, I didn't know him, but any story I really read or been told, not a kind individual. And you kind of alluded to it already, where he is not feeling that his cousin is already going to latch on to him, possibly because he probably believes he's a huge star. Well, if he has this guy with him, he might carry him down or take away the attention. Is this where you think, because you read this book and you have all these details fresh in your brain, is this where you think it begins, where eventually tag teams do break up in life and in the ring? Mm-hmm. Is this where it really starts, even though there is no foundation yet?
Well, I think it's just that Dynamite Kid never really changed. This is always within him. And before we move forward, you mentioned that book, and I do want to tell people, if you enjoy reading about the British Bulldogs, this book is fantastic. It's called Dynamite and Davey, The Explosive Lives of the British Bulldogs by Stephen Bell. I'll be referencing it throughout our conversations today. But also, I mean, I spent time with these guys during my time there. And I also have extensively interviewed Diana Hart, also Harry, Davey Boy's son, and of course Bret over the years since. So that's why this is one of my favorite topics, because it is just such a fascinating story with everything that was involved there. Between the Hart family and these two kids from Wigan and they married, Davey Boy marries Diana, one of the Hart sisters, and that connection that, Dynamite and who he married and, who Bret married. I mean, it was all in not in a bad way, but like incestual. It was just like everybody was connected to the family somehow. So anyway, but that was certainly the beginning, but it would have been that way anyway. I don't know, whoever I think Dynamite Kid was teamed up with, I don't think he would ever have wanted like someone for their star to shine brighter than his. And his talent was just so immense, nobody really could match it. Davey Boy was, as Bret has described him, was somebody who, wasn't necessarily like this leader type or somebody would, go move on his own or whatever. But he said you could tell him one thing and he would learn it and he would do it brilliantly. And so there, as far as that dynamic between the Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy, Tom was always going to be the alpha of that pair. But at some point, everybody has enough, and Davey eventually reached that point. But when they, formed that tag team, I don't think they even realized how great they would be together. And it was from the very beginning, when people saw when they stepped into the ring, it was like, wow. And they were doing things in the ring, as I mentioned, not just the high flying stuff, but they added that incredible level of violence that, that you didn't see. And it was controlled violence. They talk about, Dynamite Kid when he was in the ring that, he'd put something on you, but you wouldn't even feel it. Like it depend, if he, when he wanted to put someone over, make them shine in that ring, they said there was nobody better. And he certainly did that. And he did that for Bret. He did it for Davey Boy and thousands of others, performers in there, other partners in the ring there. But you crossed them, man, you would pay a price, and it didn't matter where it was, in the ring or backstage.
Man.
Something that you pissed him off, boy. He just, he didn't let those slights go away. He made sure that he got even.
Yeah. Again, there's some stories out there we'll definitely talk about on this. For me, I think historically, British Bulldogs Hart Foundation is the beginning of going, the WWF's got really good tag teams. Because before this, they had tag teams in and out. You had some people. I think this is the foundation of it all. Like if we're putting tag teams in the Hall of Fame and this combo together, British Bulldogs and Hart Foundation begins it. Because after this, you have, let's go like Demolition, you have Powers of Pain, you have the Rockers, New Age Outlaws, Dudley Boys, keep going on and on. I feel like without the Hart Foundation, British Bulldogs being a success, then tag teams would have been there, but they wouldn't have been so prominent in the 80s and early 90s because tag teams was just as big as, say, if you're the Intercontinental Champion or the World Champion. Some of these teams were gigantically popular, and this combo, I think, for me, does it.
Yeah, and I think that, before people who would go to these arenas and stuff and see these mismatched tag teams and they'd be okay. They'd be okay matches, but it was just obvious that, it was difficult for many of them to, adjust. I mean, some tag team where one side is, the guy, the top guy, what might weigh 180 or something like that. And then you're trying to go up in a ring against a guy who's 250 or more. But the teams like the Rockers, as we talked about, and of course the British Bulldogs, who initially weren't like these massive when they started that. They that mass came later with some help, but they showed right away that they could go in and everything they did was plausible. That they could take down a big man because they had the skill and the speed and the agility to do it. And it was that's why I think people loved it so much. And then you would get in there with some really good, seasoned vets who could adjust to it and embrace it. And man, that was really where everything took off because it didn't matter who you put them in the ring with. If they were at a level of skill that matched theirs, whatever the style was, they would find a way to make it work and just have these wonderful explosive matches that people just blew the roof off the arenas to see.
Technically, they're I guess WrestleMania 2 is where they first win their tag team championship belts in the WWF against the Dream Team, Bruce the Barber Beefcake, Greg the Hammer Valentine. But WrestleMania 2 also is very historic because it's not in one location. It's not in two locations. Oh, yeah. It's in three damn locations. And
remember, they only did that once, Steve. They only did that once because they realized, time
zones. True. You have Nassau Coliseum, you have the Rosemont Horizon, and you have Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena. Different time zones, folks, for each of them. And the British Bulldogs technically is the main event of the Rosemont Horizon portion of this WrestleMania 2. And Ozzy Osbourne is there. And Ozzy Osbourne is one of the biggest at the time. He's still a huge celebrity, but in this time frame, it's got to feel pretty cool if I was the British Bulldogs to be like, so we got something planned for you. What is it? Ozzy Osbourne's going to be with you. I would have lost my mind in 1986.
Well, it was all part of the spectacle as we saw it really came together at WrestleMania 9 when it was kind of like the peak of spectacle. But Vince, of course, knew early on that got attention when you brought in celebrities and, people that were, at the peak of popular culture. Get them then when they're hot. And you're going to get, not necessarily people are going to come to the event for it, but it certainly adds to the excitement in the show that you're going to see. But in many cases, though, if you were, a wrestling fan, you didn't need Ozzy Osbourne to want to be at the Rosemont Horizon to see that tag team matchup because they did not disappoint.
No, it's just so funny to think where it's like, we're going to bring in celebrities and like Alice Cooper.
Liberace. I'm like, who would have thought like Liberace would be like at Madison Square Garden?
The check cleared.
Morton Downey Jr. with we can go on and on, but Steve Allen, which is
that's the rowdy. Oh man, and but playing the piano in the bathroom.
It's what we have seen sports entertainment become. But even then, it was happening.
But you go from WrestleMania 1 where you have Muhammad Ali, Liberace, Cyndi Lauper, all that, and then you go to WrestleMania 2 and it's like, all right, it's in 3 locations. Who do you got? Yeah, you got Ozzy. We got. There's a few more. There's a few more people across the board there, but it's just funny to think that that is what we have here. The Bulldogs do lose the tag team titles eventually to the Hart Foundation. But this is one of those nights where you're seeing the wear and tear on the Dynamite Kid because of the physicality that he puts in the ring. He's injured in this matchup. He can't even really get in the ring. They double team Davey the whole time. There's a crooked referee angle with dangerous Danny Davis becoming a character eventually. Is this one of those moments where just get it in the ring and have it happen? Because we've talked already about titles changing hands, not on television, away from the eyes, just to say it happened. Why drag these people out there if they really can't wrestle, just to make sure the heels get more heat?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it, and the show must go on, Steve. And one thing that's you see here at this point, we're talking 1986, right?
We're in 87 now when they lost the tag team titles to Hart Foundation.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking Hart Foundation. I'm talking about WrestleMania. But you're already seeing early on the punishment that Tom is doing to his body. And, and you look at some, like the moves that he did, like with that snap suplex, which has to take an amazing toll on your body, especially when you're doing that to people that are, well over 200 pounds. And he's doing that night after night. And then just you watch some of those matches and what he would do. You just kind of thought like it was a matter of time. It's just not, it's physics. You cannot do that to a body repeatedly. And we're talking, pretty much every single night, sometimes twice in a day, but you're seeing already early on here, like at this point in 87, but even earlier than that, 86 in there, he's still, he's starting to use painkillers and, because it's necessity, it's the only way you get into the ring. And like they talk about in the book where, these back injuries he had where these discs were literally bulging out of his back and he can barely, walk. And yet he finds a way to recover within a matter of, of no time, really. and gets back in the ring. Just insane that he did that. But that was he was willing to pay it because he wanted to be the best in the world, and he was loving the ride.
Yeah, but okay, so February 7th is this airs on Superstars of Wrestling, the double team and the new tag team champions. So he can't physically walk to the ring. They kind of drag him to the ring, and he just stays there and he gets knocked out. Like, there's a bunch of shenanigans to make sure they lose here.
Yeah.
So you'd think if a man can't walk to the ring and actually perform, he would be out for a long time. He wrestles at WrestleMania 3 2 months later.
Yeah.
What is it? Is this the same method we talked about before, where if you don't wrestle, you don't get paid? So whatever needs to happen to get me in the ring, give it to me. I'll swallow it. I'll put it in my body. Like, I need to get out there, because if I don't get out there, I don't get paid. Like, is that the problem with the system here?
Absolutely, of course, and that's the way it is. You have no guaranteed contract. If you're injured, you're not getting paid. You're not performing. You're not doing the job they want you to do, and you've got no backup. You don't have the Lloyds of London policy like Mr. Perfect had. So what are you going to do? And they at this point, they're living a lifestyle. They've bought big homes in Calgary. They've got nice cars. The family moved in there. And so they've got some serious overhead. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing. And plus, you don't want to lose your place. Whether that insecurity is within everyone, and I'm sure that was a part of the Dynamite Kid's thinking too. But he, cast everything aside of I may be paralyzed to the story of he had surgery and leaves that basically the day after the surgery and leaves and they keep telling him, like, you got to take, the doctors wanted him to take 6-8 weeks off. 2 weeks he's lifting, he's doing, all these things that you'd think that one little tweak on your spine and that's it. You're neck down, you got nothing. I didn't stop him. So these guys, just there wasn't any other path forward for him. There's no way you were going to keep him out of the ring.
Man, it's crazy to think, but WrestleMania 3, they do wrestle with Tito Santana against Dangerous Danny Davis and the Hart Foundation. I always liked Dangerous Danny Davis. I always thought that we'll probably never do a podcast about him, but I enjoyed the evil character that actually became a professional referee, and then he was a referee, then a wrestler, then back to a referee who was no longer evil. What'd you think of Dangerous Danny Davis as a character? I enjoyed him.
Oh, absolutely. And, I give credit to anybody who can, these guys, most of the guys that became referees were started in the ring crew. So to reach a point like that and become superstars, and it's like people like, Steve Lombardi, who wasn't necessarily, he wasn't a referee or anything like that, but the guy worked his way up. These guys, Barry Horowitz, who were, enhancement talent, and I think they deserved that title, not jobbers, because they knew how to work with people, they knew how to put them over, and so you get yourself to a position where they're actually giving you a little push. Well, damn, that's great. And Danny had that character that he could be that evil ref. He was gets banned. I think he was at one point banned for life, right? So
you have to be.
Of his shenanigans.
President Jack Tunney was laying down the law.
Yeah. So I absolutely love Danny. He's a great guy. Great guy.
I was going to say, we're never going to talk about him in a full episode.
Yeah.
Let's give him a little shine. Gave him a little shine. Towards the end, though, of the Bulldogs, they eventually get Matilda. And Matilda, it's not the age of animals where Jake the Snake has a boa constrictor. Coco Beware has a parrot. You have the Bulldogs who have a dog, a little French dog named Matilda. What were your thoughts on animals? And because I'm going to guarantee something, because I know too many dead snake stories, that these animals weren't really being taken care of.
Yeah, it's a fair statement. I mean, but imagine it was tough enough on a human. poor Matilda, you dragged around the country. I don't know,
Did the Bulldogs take care of the dog?
Yeah, like today, you get on a plane, you might have a Labrador next to you in the seat with the seatbelt on. But back then, they were down in luggage. So you can imagine, and these guys had to fly all over the country. And, so it was tough. I know that Jake had the snake around here. I know that, Frankie with the bird, that was a cursed, he cursed that bird every day of his gimmick. But yeah, I don't know really what that added to it necessarily. I mean, it was, the snake had some, good spots, but Frankie just kind of hung out, and so did Matilda. And they could never get Matilda to do what they wanted her to do.
Yes.
I think there was one where, she was supposed to chase Bobby Heenan around the ring and attack him. Bobby comes out in the dog suit, yeah. And Matilda had was fascinated with something in the crowd, and they just couldn't get her to do anything. And she wasn't a mean dog anyway. She wasn't
right.
So just kind of an accessory. But I know, that was, I don't think they didn't dislike the dog. It's just, it was a pain in the ass that you've got to do that. I think at one point they had to give Matilda a little vacation where they had her at home with the family. But that was the other one of those gimmicks. At least it wasn't a ventriloquist dog.
Oh, you were reading my mind.
Yeah.
I was about to say, well, at least it wasn't Rocco.
Yeah, like the Road Warriors or LOD.
Yeah. LOD. I thought it was pretty funny because, Bobby Heenan inside that dog suit, and they're trying to get Matilda to chase him down the aisle at WrestleMania. It's not really working out. It's more just someone's holding a leash, and Bobby's running, and the person's kind of like running with the dog to make sure it follows
and they're
Bobby.
Like pushing. They're like, get him, Matilda.
Bite his ass.
Why would I do that?
Yes.
Give me a treat.
Yeah, right. I just hope, I've heard so many boa constrictor stories where like Jake would leave it in the trunk and he'd be frozen or dead. I really am hoping that there was only one Matilda, and that Matilda was taken care of in the most kindest way possible.
Yeah, there was more than one Damien. We know that. That was for sure. They lost a few of those. But I think there was only, I think there might have been another Matilda in there, I think, but not because of abuse to Matilda the First. I think that it just got to a point. But that was land of gimmicks, and that was right there with it.
It's like, your name is Bulldog.
Yeah,
we have to put you with a bulldog. Do you get it? Like, yes, I get it, Vince. I just don't want to
imagine walking out of that office and what the hell are we gonna do with an effing dog? Great.
It's like, well, I can barely walk and my back hurts, but give me that dog. We'll smile and hold it. Before we move on, though, probably the most popular story coming out of the British Bulldogs in the WWF is a backstage confrontation with the Rougeau brothers. This is probably, I've interviewed Jacques about this. I've interviewed Raymond about this, and their recounts of all this is Dynamite Kid was a bully, and he was, and Jacques involved in this situation with Dynamite Kid. Jacques is underneath the impression if he's letting people bully him, then everyone will bully him. So he has to make sure if someone pushes his buttons, he has to send out a receipt. Before we really get into that, was that a common thing, at least you notice, that if a wrestler screwed with one wrestler, that wrestler had to get back at that person, because if they didn't, it's like being in jail. Like, you're going to be stuck there as the bitch for the rest of your time there.
Yeah, basically prison rules. That's one way to put it. It was the law of the jungle. And, when I came in there, it was still old school. There was a collision between us, people like me coming in, but it was still very much old school, generational. A lot of people who'd come up, their fathers were professional wrestlers, and that's how you took care of business. You didn't go and have a meeting with Vince. You didn't go and have a little détente there and have a mediator and you sit down at a table. That's not how it worked. You either settled it in the ring, somebody did something, and might let them do it twice in the ring, and then, okay, I'm going to deliver a receipt. And whether that brought some color to the match, literally, or not, or you settled it backstage. And I saw many altercations, not necessarily where it was all out brawls, but, where guys settled it right there. And Dynamite Kid, we've heard over the years about ribs that basically practical jokes that they do, and that's just because you're around each other. It's just like a family, and you do things to each other, messing around, and that was very much a part of that world. But at the same time, there were some that took it way beyond that, to a point of cruelty, to a point of where it impacted your ability to do a job. Where a favorite was you'd cut the guy's tights up, when he's got to go out there and perform, or defecate in his boots, or it depended like what. And worse, and much worse. Yeah. I could tell you other stories, but that's kind of the level of stuff that Dynamite was into. He was well known for spiking drinks, either putting like a halcyon or something in your drink, or something that was going to put you on the toilet for the night. Very often doing that. He even did that to Davey Boy all the time, messing around. So you'd never leave an open drink around him. But he would take it to the next level, and a lot of it was just and it could be even just somebody telling him something of some kind of slight to somebody else, or some kind of slight to him, but somebody wanted to get it going. They knew it didn't take much, and Dynamite wasn't going to let it slide, and that was the situation with the Rougeaus.
Yeah, Dynamite Kid slaps Jacques in the back of the head, and there's a It's not a good time.
No, and
Jacques is not going to let that happen.
No, and it's you've spoken to many of the parties involved, and so did I. So have I, and it was kind of this thing back and forth that Jacques admits he probably said some stuff that talking about how the behavior of the Bulldogs, or whatever, and then it also, I think that was taken to another level, because I think that they had switched the order of a match that they were going to have so that the Rougeau brothers could get out to catch a flight so they could get home. And that meant that the Bulldogs were going to have to stay to the end of the night, and they weren't going to get out till the end of the show, or something along those lines. And then also people making comments say, yeah, Jacques said this, said that, whatever. And he's in playing cards with Kurt Hennig, and they had a little bit of a kind of a click that they had, and that probably pumped up Dynamite Kid, and he comes into that locker room, and Jacques has got his back turned, never saw it coming, and Dynamite Kid said, well, it was an open slop, Well, man, across your ear can make you deaf. I mean, and you can't imagine, it wasn't like a little, it was knocked them right off the bench and onto the floor, and and Ray, who you've spoken to, and his reputation. Ray was a tough son of a bitch. I mean, he was he was skilled in martial arts, and knew, and the boys knew that he could go if it came down to it to shoot. And he steps in, but he's on crutches, and Dynamite Kid's like, you want a piece too, and Ray's like, basically, you're gonna have somebody on crutches, and well, anyway, this is where it all really begins. And, Ray, I don't know if he could have beaten Dynamite Kid, but he would have certainly given him a hell of a go if that's what it would have come down to. But Ray knew, I can't settle this. I can't do it for Ray. I got to do this for Jacques. It's got to be Jacques. He has to do it. And as you said, that's what it all comes down to. The lack of respect, you've got to have that to be able to stay at a level and be able to compete with these guys. Otherwise, like you said, you're the bitch. You're going to be treated that way. And this goes on and on for weeks. They talk about, they're on a flight one time, and Dynamite gets on the speaker and, says something about, that was a great, slap or something, just a subtle whatever to a plane load of people. It just is getting way out of control there. Yeah. And Jacques realizes that I've got to answer this, as he says, in my comeback. And he tells the story of them being in hotel rooms, and Ray, them taking the mattress up off the bed, and Ray showing him how to throw a very powerful punch. And, Jacques talks about how the night before they knew they had to try and wait till they could get Dynamite alone and he could do this. And he called his dad, and he thought that his father would say, no, don't do this. And he said, you hear about the roll of quarters. It was his dad who said, well, if you're going to do it, stop at the bank, get a roll of quarters. And when you throw that punch, you put everything you got into it. So it wasn't something Jacques wanted to do, but he knew that if for his livelihood and really for his own esteem and everything else, he had to do it. And he did, and he pulled it off. And they say it was he cold cocked him. Well, when Dynamite Kid came up behind him and smacked, he never saw that punch coming, that slap coming either. Mm-hmm. And so it had the desired effect, and that's how it ended. Unfortunately, Jacques had to know going into that he may have thought, this wasn't going to be the end of it. You can't imagine like Dynamite Kid's going to let something go, but he knew he had to do it.
Oh, you have to, especially in that time frame. Like we brought up, kind of, it's like the prison rules, where if you don't do something, everyone's going to treat you like that. Everyone's going to steal your food if you don't, pretty much get your respect back. Which I remember interviewing Raymond about this, and when he told me about that, every night in the hotel, they would lift up the bed mattress and practice punching on it. And then when they would take showers after wrestling, they would take separate showers. So like Jacques would go in first, Raymond would body the security for him, and then they would swap and do that after. Because just all those little things of, even when I interviewed Raymond, he said Vince McMahon brought him into a room and had a meeting with him and was like, what is happening? Like, tell me what's happening. And he told him, he goes, this is what happened. He slapped my brother, and then my brother punched him. And, we would walk by him in the hallway, and he would suddenly, you think he's going to punch you, but he'd scratch his ear really quick near your face. Yeah. And so he's like, he knew this was going to happen. Vince is like, all right, well, can we not do this? So Vince, according to Raymond, brought both teams into the room and had a meeting with both teams. I was like, we can't do this shit. Like, we cannot do this. We have to work together or something, because we need to not have this be the prison rules. But yet, stories coming out of Vince probably was like, I love this shit. I love these guys competing against each other in such a manner. They'll go out there and be the best for me. I'm guessing. Yeah,
but I think also it just wasn't good for business. He may have loved the macho shit and all that, but at the same time, I think he felt, no, we can't have this. And like you talk about that meeting that they had. Now, remember, Dynamite Kid, he had a lot of his teeth were knocked out when
was it the
he
front four
it was
teeth
like
knocked out?
It took a few of his teeth out, and he claims, well, he didn't go down, but they say
who
like
claims
that meeting,
Dynamite Kid claims
no,
that
he didn't.
Down?
He did not go down. I remember I was there. I didn't see it happen, but I remember after when it was like, oh, what the and Pat Patterson's right, everybody want to get back, like the whole thing. But they say he went down to a knee, but he didn't go down. He didn't go down to the floor. But anyway, when they had that meeting, that's when they say that's what really broke Dynamite Kid. That meeting, that was kind of the beginning of the end, where Vince said, no, this shit's got to stop. This is not going to go on forward. What do we have to do? And it was kind of like they said, well, he pays for my teeth or something like that. And I don't know if Vince believed it was over. I don't. But the fact is that it just worked out scheduling wise, that the Rougeau brothers were away from them. And then Tom went home, and that was basically it for him. As far as, that ever being able to continue again. But they say that kind of that broke him, and he was never really the same after that. And another thing we should say about Jacques here too was that, and when I spoke to him at WrestleCon, and I asked him, about his life and stuff that he's done since. Mm-hmm. And, he's been very active in his community. He especially with youth. And he started this anti-bullying organization where he goes and he talks to kids and schools, and he talks, people talk about bad things happening to you, and also, it's terrible. And I'm sure that reliving it was difficult, but I think he's proud of himself that he did stand up. And, but it was awful for him to be a guy that professional wrestler, superstar in the WWF, and he's got somebody who's bullying him, and he's not sleeping at night, and realized this is ruining my life. And he said that was kind of a wake up for him about bullying, and he's kind of committed his life to, talking about it and helping kids. And it's amazing that there was really some positive that came out of this. But it was to me, that was the beginning of the end for Dynamite Kid. And it was, it's sad because my God, what a talent. And people talk about just what he could do in the ring. It's incredible that he was considered at one point, the best wrestler in the world. And he set standards and knew things did things in the ring that even, these Japanese high flyers that he competed against, were just blown away by and learned from. So, it's, and of course, and we'll get into Davey, but for Dynamite Kid, what you also think what could have been, but could he have done it any other way? Could he have not been balls to the walls every time he went out and stepped into the ring and just sacrificed his body? Yeah. You would have thought that it was his last match every time he went in there, because when he was in that ring, he gave everything. And I can't imagine anybody really that ever had that gift of seeing him perform live would think anything differently.
Yeah. Again, one of the best. Even I don't want to really talk about him because he's a piece of garbage, but Chris Benoit pretty much took every aspect of Dynamite Kid and became he hunched over like him. He punched like him. He did every headbutts, the snap suplex, every move Chris Benoit ever did was an homage clearly to Dynamite Kid.
Yes.
It's interesting though, because the first ever SummerSlam, the Bulldogs do fight the Rougeaus, and in no contest, it goes to a 20-minute draw. So clearly, they're already having problems on the pay-per-views doing that. But the last Bulldogs pay-per-view is the Survivor Series, 1980. What was it? 1988. Dynamite Kid never even gets in the ring because he's so hurt. He came and wrestle. Davey gets pinned, so that means their team is eliminated. But the Rougeaus got eliminated before them, so they get out. And Jacques, in an interview, said, he's like, yeah, it was by design for us to lose really fast, to get out of there, take our showers, leave the arena. Then the Bulldogs could get eliminated. Then they could come back. And so it's interesting that no matter what, they were still having issues about, we're there's peace, but there's really not peace here.
And I think at that point, it was fortunate that, that Dynamite Kid was in that kind of condition, because maybe it would have been a different story if he would have physically been able. So I think that it just kind of worked out the way it was supposed to go. And as I said, that really that meeting, I think, was where it was just the end. And there was certainly, like you said, there was opportunity. It could have been different. They could have had another, encounter or whatever. But no, it didn't happen. Thank God. But very sad that that's the way it had to happen.
Yeah, it is the end of Dynamite Kid, because eventually they do leave, and pretty much it's you never see Dynamite Kid ever again in the WWE. And it was shocking to me, because as I got into wrestling as a child, I would rent the VHS tape, so you could go back and watch the Bulldogs and Hart Foundation, WrestleMania 2 and 3 and all that. But then out of nowhere, there's no Davey Boy Smith. And strangely enough, he pops back up as the British Bulldog, as Davey Boy Smith, a singles wrestler. He has braided hair. He has a new dog with him.
He's massive.
Yeah. He's massive.
Yeah.
I wonder how. Working out, obviously. Jim, he obviously worked out. What do you think about that? Because the British Bulldogs. Now Davey Boy Smith comes back, and he's called the British Bulldog. If you're a Dynamite Kid, what are you thinking? Because he obviously tries to sue the Bulldog for this.
Well, it's, and in between all this, I mean, that he comes to the realization that Davey had copyrighted the British Bulldogs. Like, he owned it. So that Tom Billington couldn't go around as the British Bulldog necessarily, because Davey Boy owned that name. So in some ways, it's kind of like the Rockers that, I think that Davey Boy at some point was okay. I'm ready. I'm ready to be a singles performer. I don't think that the breaking up of that tag team, especially with all the trouble that came with Tom and that whole mess, and he was part of it in a sense because this was his tag team partner. But I'm sure I believe that he was kind of like, I don't need this crap. And felt like, I think I'm ready. I'm ready to go on my own. So the timing of it was very good. And I know that he had a conversation with Vince and told him that, I want to be part of the WWE. He had bills to pay and he wasn't going to go down with that ship. So it probably emotionally was difficult because it was a brother. Let's not, look at it any other way. And I don't think that Davey Boy ever thought of him differently. I'm sure it pained him tremendously to see what happened to Tom Billington. But he had a family to take care of, and he had, he had to have a livelihood. What was he going to do? So it worked out well at that time that Davey Boy could be the British Bulldog, and found some great success at that time.
I loved him. I think I interviewed the Warlord too, and I was like, man, you fought Bulldog at 3 out of 4 pay-per-views in 1991.
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, we had a chemistry because they both were gigantic men, and so you get the feat of strength moments, which I love. You need that in the matches. You can't just be flying around or doing crazy things all the time. You have to do that. Though, when I interviewed Jacques about Bulldog coming back, Jacques has been repackaged at this point too as the Mountie.
The Mountie always gets his man. You know that, Steve?
Yeah. He got the shock. Hell shock,
yes,
yeah. I love him. I loved him so much. Piper though wore the shock-proof vest and stopped him that one time. But this moment, Jacques says Bulldog went up to him and said, "Can we talk?" And so Bulldog leads Jacques to the locker room into the shower. And Jacques thinking, am I about to get jumped?
Yeah, right.
He's like, am I about to get jumped? And it was in the shower that he talked to him. And Jacques says, I had my fist ready, like right by my side, ready to punch him in the face because I don't know what to happen next. And Bulldog just apologized. He apologized for everything with Dynamite. He's like, I'm so sorry that had to happen. He's like, that wasn't me. That was him. I want to just start new. And Jacques said, all right, we can start new. But then Jacques also in my interview was like, he's like, we can start new, but don't pull any shit. Like he pretty much said, like, don't try me at all because I will punch you in the face.
Yeah, I will deliver.
I've done it.
Yeah,
I've done it, and I'll do it again.
I think that was a wise move on the part of Davey Boy, because I'm sure that Jacques had no idea really that this was going to carry over. And like I said, when all that was going on, not that Davey Boy got involved, but he was part of that clique, part of that crew. It wasn't just Davey Boy and Tom. There were a few others that were also that ran in that crowd.
Was Jim Powers in that? I believe.
Yeah, and just not Jim necessarily, but there was a couple of dudes. They were not good dudes, and they didn't last in the world of professional wrestling long. But they had the same mentality as Tom, and after a while, unless you are an unbelievably but you get run out. And that's kind of what happened. But I think that was a great move on the part of Davey Boy to say, look, hey, I'm apologizing for what, if you felt that how, I had this towards you, but regardless, let's move forward. And I hope that you'll, let this just go, that we can just move forward with a new start here.
Yeah.
Good move.
Because it could have gone sour pretty quick for both, because Davey wants a second chance.
And like I said, it was business too. It all comes down to it. These guys were independent contractors. Nobody's got your back except you. That's it. You're the whole company. And so that's good business. Why would you want to have some kind of bad blood with somebody else who's being put over? So it was business too.
Yeah, I'm glad they actually acknowledged it. But I did love all those Davey Boy Smith Warlord matches. And there's one at SummerSlam 91. I think we talked about it before in the Texas Tornado episode, where I love it. It's because it's Texas Tornado, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and the British Bulldog. They all have something. Ricky doesn't have his pet alligator that he calls a dragon.
That's another gimmick. We forgot about that one.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
How'd you like to travel with that thing? How'd you like to travel around with that thing?
It's like, oh, so what?
You're not paying attention. It takes a finger, you know,
dude, a pet dragon.
Yeah,
that's what he has, a pet dragon. Though, you are huge in the UK as part of doing commentary for a lot of the WWE UK events, like UK Rampage and things of that nature. You're part of, your voice is on there. Davey Boy Smith, I feel like he catered to a new audience because you have Bret Hart and he was huge around the world, but Bulldog was huge in England. And obviously, if business is going down in America, you want to expand. Do you feel like British Bulldog was an asset to that?
Oh man, you're talking about for the UK and even in Europe? Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's why do you think every time he went over there, he won? And not just to the UK. Whenever they would like European tours, they would put that over, which made a hell of a lot of sense. That you've got this guy that, and it wasn't like they were giving it to him. I mean, he was a big enough star and a performer that that was certainly a big part of it. So yeah, of course, and they capitalized on that, and it certainly helped business. No more so than at that SummerSlam.
Oh my God, yeah. I honestly, I think the success of October 3rd, 91, it's Albert Hall, in a 20-man battle royal, and Bulldog wins, and the audience just erupts. And I think even around this time, that probably at least the WWE is looking at, okay, this was a success. Can we go even further with that? And like you just brought it up, SummerSlam 1992, Wembley Stadium, London, England. He's going to win it, or he wants to, or none. The main event for the first time ever is just the Intercontinental title in the main event. Bret the Hitman Hart, who's on fire at this time, taking on British Bulldog in the UK. On paper, what does this look like to you? Because we have never seen the Intercontinental title as the main event by itself, unless you count WrestleMania 6, which was title for title, but not really title for title, Hogan versus Warrior.
Yeah, well, and you talk about, there was basically a double main event at that SummerSlam, but to anybody really who was there, the main event was Bret Davey. There's no question about that. And you talk about the cachet, like what was it that put Davey Boy over so much? Not just the fact that he was from England, but he's from Wigan. And if people know where Wigan is outside of Manchester and is basically a coal mining town, where it's working. It's the blue collar people. This is a kid, success story coming from, these a small working town. And so that added to it. You can imagine that crowd at Wembley, I'm sure, was made up of a lot of people that came from the outskirts of London who came to cheer on literally one of their own. And so that added to it. But also, there was just so much involved in it. It remains my favorite pay-per-view event of all time, all the ones that, not just the ones I work, but everything, because it just had so much involved, and I, some great matchups. But to me, that match was what made it all. It just carried it, and because you had all these questions surrounding, you had the family involvement that was a shoot. It was for real with Diana, Bret Hart's sister, and Davey Boy, her husband, and the questions surrounding Davey Boy's health. He basically disappeared. Nobody knew what was really going on with him at that point. And isn't that sad to think about that, after, coming back and then being at singles, and then we're just within a few years, and this is where we are. People are like, what's going on with Davey Boy Smith? There's talk, did he have a staph infection? Was he doing drugs? Was he, Bret, interviewed Bret about it, how he said he tried to get a hold of Davey Boy all summer, and preceding that, months before the event, and he just never responded. And people who know Bret Hart, he's very meticulous, and he knew the importance of this match, what it was going to mean for their careers and everything. And he had that match envisioned. He had it written out on legal pad, like how it was going to go down, and he wanted to go over this. And they didn't even know if Davey Boy was going to show up for this match. I mean, that's kind of what it came down to. He gets there, and there's conflicting reports of the condition he was in. That he was drugged out. He didn't know what he was doing. Bret goes over the whole match with him. He basically forgets it. Bret tells the story of how when they got in the ring and they lock up and they go a couple of moves, and he says to Bret, "I'm Fooked," because he didn't remember anything, and then that he ended up having to carry the whole match. Well, Diana completely disagrees with that. She said, "How could that's not Davey? That there's no way. I don't think that happened. He wasn't in that kind of condition. He was ready to do this match." Who knows? I don't, honestly, to this day, I don't know. But I will tell you, I think it was one of the greatest matches I ever saw. And I've looked at it many times, and I try and see where, we know in these matches, these guys talk to each other. You see how they do it, the brushes with the ears as they go by. What you don't see a whole hell of a lot of that. If you're the dance leader here, the whole match, you're going to see a hell of a lot more than that. And I'll tell you, you're going to see some misses. I don't see many. If they're in there, and I can't, I'm not a trained professional, but I've seen an awful lot of matches over my life, and to me, that thing stands up. Was one of the greatest matches, and it was given. Meltzer gave it, I don't know if it's 4.5 or 5 stars, but it was a highly rated match. And if you had somebody who was totally out of it, who forgot the match, I don't know how in the world you pull that off. But regardless, with all the drama involved in what happened at that event, in and out of the ring, and the reality of it, it stands to me as one of the greatest professional wrestling events that ever happened. It was just amazing. And I remember being there. I had chills. I had, honestly, tears in my eyes. Wow. Looking at those guys in the ring when it was over, and because I knew that was real, because that's whatever the storyline is, but also just the stress of it, that leading up to that, and what all of those performers did, and that relief and love from in Diana for these two humans was just incredible. I even thinking now, it impacts me. I think about that of standing there and going like, oh my God, they did it. And they did, man. It was amazing.
The ending when they're standing there with the fireworks going behind them and the sister's in the middle, who's also the wife. Mm-hmm. Like that to me is one of those moments of we're crossing over. When people call it wrestling, their soap opera for men. That right there is where does the sister lie? Does the sister lie towards the brother or the husband? And that was just one little layer of the story. And WWE.com, which was a fan voted poll, voted Bret Hart versus British Bulldog as the greatest SummerSlam match of all time. Yeah. I'd even throw that on top there. One of the greatest matches, top 10 matches they've ever produced in the WWF's history. But the story that even Bret Hart's book brings up, you kind of alluded to it, where Davey's been up all night doing drugs, according to Bret Hart, all night. So when he shows up to the arena for this event, he is all sorts of screwed up. And he tells Bret, he's like, listen, I'm not in a good shape. I'm not feeling well. I did this, I did that. And I don't remember anything. So we need to just figure this out. The fact that that's the backstory to what actually is happening, and yet it is voted the best SummerSlam match of all time, really shows you two things. One, Bret Hart is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Do this with someone who, according to him, is very messed up and is not all there. And the other thing is just how we're perfect place, perfect opponent, perfect audience, perfect ending. That might also have saved the day here, because you have hometown boy does good with wife in the ring in front of his people. Like you're adding a lot of layers there, which actually, no matter what happened the night before, fans didn't know. We didn't know. We just saw a match play out in front of us, which we thought was beautiful. So the backstory, though, is juicier, obviously, as newsmen we are. But as in reality, no one knew. It looked great. Still voted the greatest SummerSlam match of all time. It sucks that it was all
deservedly so.
Yes, and you interviewed Diana about this. What were her thoughts, though, on being involved with the storyline for the first time? Because the Harts have always kind of been brought in and out of random things, but this is kind of the first time that we're not just bringing in the wrestlers. We're going to bring in the family.
Yeah. Well, but even before that, you would always, Stu was always there, and Helen. They would come to the matches, and
they'd be like in the crowd. The
yeah,
mom
they
and
do that
dad
side, but
shots.
they had, they got, Stu got involved in a couple of the, of the bits and the brothers.
That'll be years later, though. 93.
Yeah, but this was, you're right, and to be involved in it. I think initially Diana was a little like, I don't know if I want to do that, but I think she really enjoyed it, and she did become a big part of those storylines as well later with Davey Boy. So obviously, I think if it was not something that she wanted to do, she wouldn't have done it. So I think that, but that was a besides the storyline, there was a lot going on between the families and everything. As that leading up to it, and of course beyond. But yeah, it was. It could not have been a better storyline the way it all worked out. But I think right until the second they stepped into that ring, nobody had a clue of how it was going to end. It could have been a complete disaster.
Well, this title reign does end very quickly, though. So he wins the championship August 29th, 80,000 plus, London, England, Wembley Stadium. That's great. Yeah. He loses the title November 14th to Shawn Michaels on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, and scheduled for Survivor Series that year is supposed to be the Bulldog versus the Mountie. That match just kind of disappears and gets canceled because the British Bulldog is let go by the WWF. According to Bret the Hitman Hart in his book, he says Vince McMahon found out that Warrior was receiving illegal shipments of human growth hormones, HGH, from a crooked pharmacist in England, and Bulldog was involved with that. So that set Warrior out of the company again, and Bulldog out of the company again. What amazing SummerSlam moment to end in tragedy here just a few months later.
Yeah. We've seen this time and time again with human nature. And, you think about, it's all about choices, but, Davey Boy felt that he needed that extra, whatever it was that was going to create the body that he used, that it was worth taking those chances. But you just see time and time again how, people can't help themselves. Life gets in the way. Dynamite Kid was no different. It seemed like every time, everything's great, and then you find a way to F it up. And Davey Boy's a perfect example here that's what happened to him too. You think like right here, how more perfect could things have been when coming out of that SummerSlam, and then within a few months he's out. It's just a part of professional wrestling, and it comes with, and we've talked about this before, that, it's a deal with the devil. It really does come down to that, because you think about it and go like, how could you mess this up? Why would you want to mess this up? Well, they don't go into it saying, I want to mess it up. It's just that, the lifestyle, like what you have to do, and stuff you got to put into your body so you can do it. I don't know if there's another way to do it. Like, some of them were able to. There were some that were that disciplined. People like Tito Santana, or these other guys that just realized that I don't need that lifestyle. I've got a great home. I've got a great wife. I got my kids I got to take care of. But others, their temptations are too much. Their demons are too strong. And, where you could break it down psychologically, that a lot of these guys come from places where they're damaged getting there. So it's unfortunate, but part of the business. And Davey Boy Smith was no exception.
No, it's unfortunate because, after this, he shows up in WCW, he pops back up in the WWE. He's around for a while, being involved with the Hart family, Owen Hart and Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil. He leaves again. He comes back again. He cut up all of his gear, so he comes back wearing jeans in 1999. He's just jeans British Bulldog, and he doesn't fit in. It's the Attitude Era. It's like a very awkward fit. Obviously, I think we'll have to do an episode where it's like later on where he's fighting Shawn Michaels, and there's a kind of a rape allegation involving Diana with Shawn Michaels in 1996.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bizarre and crazy that you think, oh, you're back in the company now. Oh, what's your storyline? Oh, I'm with Bret Hart and Owen Hart, and but now I'm going to be involved with Shawn Michaels for the world title. What's the story? We're going to say Shawn raped my wife.
Yeah. That's the chapters of that, like a gutter period, is the way I kind of refer to it, where they knew that to compete, they had to go into the gutter, and some of those, storylines to me to this day, I think, like the one with the stalker with DDP,
yeah.
You're like that Hawk's a drug addict or an alcoholic, and they're going to have him actually fake drinking, So I that period of some of those storylines, you're like, what the hell were you thinking? That was going to sell?
Like, you weren't with the company, but they had him with Jim Cornette and Owen Hart and Vader and Yokozuna, Camp Cornette. There's a lot of random things like that. He gets injured in WCW because he eventually, after the Montreal screw job, he leaves at WWF again, goes back to WCW, and he gets back body dropped on a trap door that the Ultimate Warrior, of all people, is going to pop out of later on the night. He doesn't know about this. That injures his back. That then begins more things for him. Another WWF run. It's over. It's done for the Bulldogs. Dynamite Kid is now in a wheelchair. Bulldog's injured because of this trap door, and he's no longer himself. It's just done. They are finished, and that book really kind of shows it. The destruction of what happened to both men is they gave their lives to professional wrestling, but professional wrestling gave them their lives. Sure, the ones they were living, but without wrestling, did either man really feel full?
Yeah, and it just goes back to, they had these beautiful race cars, and they ran those things to the limit night after night after night, and didn't necessarily keep up the maintenance, so to speak, to keep them running, keep themselves healthy. But as I said, I don't know if there was another way for them to do it. And, for a decade, maybe a few more years in there, they were able to be at the top and just ride that wave. But as with anything else, at some point, it's got to end. And in this case, it ended tragically for both of them. Davey Boy dead at 39 years old, and his personal life at the time was a mess. Had gone back to Calgary, had gotten involved with Bruce Hart's wife, and the family had been just torn to shreds. And then he dies of a heart attack at 39. Dynamite Kid lasts a few decades longer, but you can imagine what his life was like. There's excerpts in the book of people like Bret Hart and them, others going to visit Tom at where he's living in just some decrepit apartment in Wigan, where the windows are boarded up. It's a horrible neighborhood, and he's living in basic squalor. And he lasts till he's 60, but just not much of a life, and could barely get around. Fortunately, he did have some reconciliation with his kids, but really was never in their lives. So when he left the United States, and basically felt I think overall, he saw him, I think one time they came over on a trip, and they did reunite later, but they were never in his life. And that's tragic, but to the point where he felt I would be worse for them if I was, that's just so sad. So, like that book is aptly named with the explosive lives. I mean, they were these meteorites, these gigantic blazing stars that just were when they were flying, they're bright as they could possibly be in the sky, and then when it faded, they fell, and that was it. And it's just tragic stories for both of them. But my God, what they brought to professional wrestling, and the people that had the opportunity to see them can never forget it. I mean, they were among the best, and when they were at their peak, they were a gift to this business.
The legacy of them will be pioneers of the tag team wrestling forever. Whatever you think of them personally, or whatever they did in their real lives, or whatever in the ring, as I mentioned during our conversation, was I feel like them versus the Hart Foundation started this feeling and this aspect of there always needs to be good tag teams, always needs to be good tag team wrestling. And they started the foundation of it all. And they're carried into today's world, They influenced so many different wrestlers, and they had it all. And unfortunately, with a lot of these tales we talk about, is sometimes wrestling takes over them, and that's what they become. They're no longer themselves. They are the wrestlers. And 39 years old, like I'm 39, like that to me, dying at 39 when he did so much in his short amount of time on this world, and Dynamite Kid doing so much, to being confined to a wheelchair, maybe a bully, maybe a shitty person, but he was a good wrestler. So if you didn't know anything about that, you enjoyed his wrestling. And so, you started off the show by saying, they're one of the top tag teams of all time. And I can't argue there, like where do you put them in the 80s category, or is this all time?
Yeah. But they paid the price, and it was an expensive one. It just sad in that case. But like I said, they were, the fact that we had the opportunity to see them is awesome. But they did pay a very heavy price all the way around, and all those that were in their orbit.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've talked about them. I assume this podcast could go 8 hours, but we somehow shortened it down to an hour and 20. It seems right now. But again,
before we go though, I do want to again plug that book for Stephen Bell is the author of it. He did a great job. I mean, that a lot of these books, people go just kind of slap them together, but it was so well done that Bruce Hart wrote the foreword on it. And if you know the story with him, you wouldn't think that he'd want to be involved in it, but he felt that the story was being told correctly. And also Brownwyn Billington, who is Tom Billington's daughter, wrote the epilogue on it. So, and as I mentioned, they did reconcile a little bit when he was older. But, check it out. It's Dynamite and Davey, The Explosive Lives of the British Bulldogs. And I'm going to try and get in touch with Stephen, because I want to bend his ear. I always love to hear more. But I just want to tell him what a great job he did.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that book, and for the notes from that book as well. And thanks everyone for watching and listening to another episode of the Golden Era Podcast. Thanks again for being here. I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.